It is good for aesthetics. It is a good defense because it can help keep evil, mean, low-down people off your back and off your neck. And it will also cut a highway through the desert or wilderness, and it opens up so many viable and creative options. If we increase the educational attainment of young people, I believe we will reduce the crime statistic. There is another statistic that's seldom talked about in journalism or in the historical documentations of the civil rights movement, and that is that during the 381 days of the march in Montgomery, Alabama, the crime rate went down in the African American community during the march of 381 days, non-violent protest. The crime rate went down. The late Mrs. Coretta Scott King told me on one occasion that the crime rate went down somewhere between 50 to 60%. They were engaged in meaningful, fulfilling, non-violent protest activities. So education plus involvement in that which is meaningful, fulfilling, uplifting, teaching, and transforming. And the fewer of these we have, the greater our prison statistic will rise. And there's also, and the lawyers here could help me out, there is also some relationship between injustice in the criminal justice system. Because if you are uneducated and poor and unemployed, even a minor infraction can bring you major punishment. And if you do not know how to converse, dialogue, or communicate, a traffic ticket can end up being a felony charge. All of these are significant in dealing with the question you have just raised. That is perhaps too long an answer, but maybe the dialogue can continue.
My name is Khalil Huff, and I had a question about what you spoke about with regards to inclusion. You spoke of inclusion as vital to our cities, and I was thinking that if, for instance, the domestic partner registry in Cleveland that recently passed, if that's a small step towards greater inclusion, how do we constructively deal with people such as Roosevelt Coates, who quoted Leviticus during the council meeting in opposition to that registry? How do we deal with that? People that we feel should be on the side of inclusion but aren't. How do we deal with those people?
Morally and spiritually, there is no substitute for accepting all people as brothers and sisters. Even if my culturation or my orientation does not permit me to agree with, I must love, and love so profoundly that I can look into every other person's eye, male or female, gay or straight, and see that individual as a child of God and behave and respect that individual in the same manner. There is no substitute for unconditional love in human relations. That's where we have to begin. And that then will inform public policy.
Reverend Moss, in detailing your 7 points, one aspect you mentioned but really did not get into was the need for visionary leadership. Perhaps you could take a few minutes now and tell us where you see that leadership coming from.
Since I sort of term myself as a member of the Moses generation, and our children and grandchildren as members of the Joshua and Ruth and Deborah generation, I think that we have the responsibility of mentoring in such a way that we prepare the next generation and then open the door and eventually pass the baton, hopefully before we drop it, on to the next generation. For whether I heard someone refer to life as really a relay. And there is an individual who shared with me the other day when he was on the track team in college, how they were competing with another school who had the fastest runners, but they won the track meet because their coach had taught them how to pass the baton. And the fastest runners lost time and the game because they did not know how to pass the baton. I think preparation is necessary. Excellence, a necessity. But we also must develop a culture of passing the baton.
Dr. Moss, congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
As a graduate of a historically black school, and also I believe you sit on the board of a historically black school, there's recently been legislation that's currently in the Georgia State House where they're taking a combination of historically black schools and underserving other public schools, that they're trying to combine their services as far as administrative costs, what have you. But they're trying to keep the quote-unquote, the title of a historically black school. There's been two-part questions. What is your take on the legislation as far as the combination of, of states trying to take these historically black schools combined with other schools that tend to be in underserved areas? And the second question is, can you tell the historical significance of your historically black schools?
I missed the last part of your question.
The historical significance of your historically black schools, while there's a challenge for historically black schools as far as the endowment funds as far as raising money and what have you.
One, Harlem as an example in history where institutions like the historically black colleges and universities have done so much with so little. A Mary McLeod Bethune with $1.50 and a rickety building near the city dump builds Bethune-Cookman College. My own alma mater, Morehouse College, founded in the basement of a Baptist church, and its first students were former slaves. And yet, that is the institution that graduated Martin Luther King Jr.